I love a good adventure in the Yuletide season, and as you may know, Polar Express is my favorite Christmas movie. So I'm going to talk more about the Polar Express, since what you've seen in the movie is only the tip of the iceberg. And the Polar Express is not the only way of getting to the North Pole. There is another, but more on that in a bit. The Polar Express has gone by many names, like Polar Railroad and North Pole Express. Though it is hard to tell exactly how long they've been around for, I guess it would make sense if the trains for Santa Claus started as logging trains in the Victorian era, getting wood to his workshop at the North Pole, and soon after they had passenger trains, so they could give tours of the workshop, whether it be to learn a lesson or as a reward. Even to this day, Polar Railroad extends their tracks from the North Pole every Christmas season and connects them to already existing railroads, where the Polar Express would make many stops on the way to get people to and from the North Pole.
Some express?
Well, there are a lot of stations that the train has to go to get to the North Pole, and if it stopped at every one of them, it would take way too long. That's why there are multiple trains that run at the same time. Each one doesn't go to every stop, and thus, since an express train doesn't go to every stop there is, it does live up to its name. Despite the name, however, the Polar Express only goes to the North Pole, not the South. The Penguins find railroad tracks to be too much of a hassle to maintain in Antarctica, considering the extreme weather there. Plus, no one really wants to go to the South Pole. I'd talk more about it, but that's another can of worms. Now, you might have seen in the book and the movie that the train stopped at a kid's house, and the railroad tracks just magically appeared there temporarily. That usually happens if the train station can't be used, or if there is no nearby train station. It's also worth noting that Polar Railroad also runs freight trains, mainly to get raw materials to the North Pole, which are used to make the toys. Now, as trains evolved around the world, so did the Polar Express. Not only do they have steam trains like the one in the movie, but also diesel-electric trains, and even high-speed trains. Not only does the Polar Express have long-distance passenger trains, they also have a trolley system throughout the North Pole. Those who have seen the Polar Express would know how big Santa's workshop is, so it would only make sense if there were multiple trolleys running around. Not only is the trolley good for getting around the industrial city, but it also connects the workshop to the airport. That's right, the North Pole has an airport, with several commercial airlines providing special flights to and from the North Pole, just like what the Polar Express does. The first airline to fly to the North Pole was McGee Airways, which is known today as Alaska Airlines. Back when it was founded by Linnaeus McMcGee, that was during the Great Depression, so it was hard for people to enjoy Christmas. But not only did McGee persevere, people said he was as honest as an Alaskan summer day is long. It really showed when he went out of his way to have letters flown to Santa free of charge. And as the airline evolved, so did the North Pole branch in Alaska. It was thanks to Alaska Airlines that tourism kept up in Alaska, and the North Pole branch gained popularity. Something similar would happen to the Finland branch decades later. During World War II, Finnair, which was called Aero back then, was evacuating children from Finland to Sweden. They also flew children to the North Pole, since Santa Claus had his workshop open to the Allies, but only Aero was willing to fly there. It wasn't until 1983 that they would finally announce their status as a Christmas airline to the public. The next year, British Airways would join them by providing charter flights with the Concorde to Finland. Thanks to the Concorde flights, Santa Village, Finland gained popularity in tourism. Since then, British Airways has also been providing flights to and from the North Pole. It's also worth noting that British Airways has the most diverse fleet out of all the Christmas airlines. Not only do they have the Concorde, but they also have jumbo jets, seaplanes, and even helicopters. When an airline is dedicated to the North Pole, any useful plane in their former fleet gets pulled out of retirement and is rebuilt by the elves. Because if elves can make models and toys, why not the real thing? All these different planes that the Christmas airlines have may serve a unique purpose. Seaplanes are good for picking up passengers that live by the coast, especially if they're far from the train station. Planes with retractable stairs can be easier to board, and the larger planes like the 747 could be upgraded into a combi, not just for holding freight, but also for sorting letters to Santa, just like the mail cars on the Polar Express. And the Concorde can fly so fast they don't need to use a flux capacitor. And while the airlines might find it too expensive to fly the old planes, most of that gets covered by the elves, with of course the catch that these flights are for the Christmas season. Not all flights are non-stop though. Say the Polar Express is getting full, and there's a lot of other passengers it needs to pick up. It can drop off some of the passengers at the next stop where they could board a connecting flight. If there's no nearby airport, the elves could temporarily remove obstacles and use the road as a runway. Or if there's not enough road, they can have a helicopter take the passengers to the airport for a connecting flight. Plus, alternating between different modes of transport adds more to the adventure. Now one might be asking, are there any airlines that fly to the South Pole? Yes. Qantas is the airline that flies to Antarctica. While there might not be as many visitors there, Qantas is one of the few airlines that rise up to the challenge. Now, one more I'd like to bring up is Air Berlin, a German airline that earned its status by providing free flights to those who assumed the role of Santa Claus. However, this didn't save them from going out of business. Now, aside from what I already mentioned, there are several other airlines that also fly to the North Pole, but I'd be here all day if I talked about every one of them. So in the meantime, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year!